Hi, I'm Dr. Mollie Marti, and welcome to Resiliency Matters. Today we are speaking with Sally Orange, a retired major in the British Army, a globally recognized mental health advocate, and the recipient of Worldmaker's 2025 Promise Leader Award. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you very much, Molly. Really, really nice to see you and join you.
Thank you. I don't do this very often, but I want to read a little bit to our viewers and listeners so they get more context on your depth of background. So Sally Orange has been awarded an MBE, one of the highest honors in the British system, for her work to reduce the stigma associated with mental health. She spent 22 years in the Royal Army Medical Corps as a physiotherapy officer, treating those severely wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan. But beneath the uniform, she was fighting a private war, nearly 2 decades of severe anxiety and depression. When Sally finally opened up and sought help, she was met with a devastating outcome: medical retirement from the Army. The very institute she served with loyalty now deemed her unfit to serve. Sally went on to turn her heartbreak into purpose, using physical challenges to raise £1 million for dozens of mental health and military charities. She has completed marathons dressed as fruit, everything from a banana to a box of breakfast cereal. Her costumes are playful, but her message is serious. Let's talk about mental health. A few favorites: dressing as a nut for the London Marathon, nuts about mental health, together we can crack it, and as a head of lettuce, let us talk. Of course, as an orange. Sally uses humor and creativity to open doors to deeply personal conversations. In 2023, she pushed her mission to new heights by running 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. She went on to tackle the Everest Marathon, the world's highest. Her efforts go far beyond physical feats. Sally spearheaded a nationwide mental health education campaign across the UK Army Cadet Force, reaching 75,000 cadets and volunteers, setting a Guinness World Record for the most people completing an online mental health awareness lesson in 24 hours. I'll close with a quote from an admirer. Despite Sally's own ongoing battles with mental illness, she continues to show up, not as a statistic, but as a symbol, not to win medals, but to spark conversations. Her advocacy is not driven by ego or applause, but by empathy. She is, at her core, a force of nature, even when dressed as a piece of fruit. So much to unpack there, Sally, and very fun to read. And it's just been a joy because you bring the joy. It's been a joy to be in touch with you, to have met when I was in London. So let's dig in. Running marathons in iconic fruit costumes as a platform for mental health advocacy. How did this begin?
So my name is Sally Orange, and that really is my name. Quite often people think I've made up my name because of what I now do, but it's the name that I was born with. And I'd already ran the London Marathon, and I'd done it dressed as a superhero. And at the time, I didn't feel like a superhero until I actually crossed that finish line, and I'd really felt that superhero feeling when I crossed the line. And I wanted to do it again, and I wanted to raise more money. And I suddenly thought, well, my surname's Orange. Why don't I dress as an orange? And yeah, it was just the joy that I saw on other people's faces, and young people, calling out and wanting a high five as I was running. And it just made me realize that it drew attention to me, and I had got this mental health message that I wanted to get out there, that I wanted people to talk about it. And so I then went on to sort of dress as a banana in Afghanistan. I did a marathon around Camp Bastion, and I did actually do the US Marine Corps marathon dressed as a watermelon. And people then would sort of, they would just come up and say, why are you dressed as an apple, orange, banana? And I say, I want to change the conversation and break the stigma associated with poor mental health. And more often than not, people would then say to me, I've had a problem, or I know someone who's had a problem. And it just really subtly just opens up that conversation. And if they're not happy talking about it, then they'll just go back to the costume. And I must say, when I did the US Marine Corps marathon, at the end, everybody's wanting that iconic photo with their medal and a US Marine, and there I was dressed as a watermelon, and I'd got 6 US Marines who all wanted their photo taken with me. So if you ever need an incentive to want to run a marathon, then there's one right there. So yeah, it's just it's just become a something that I enjoy, and I've now done 87 marathons, and I've done every continent. The first time was over a few months, and then, as you mentioned, in 7 days as well. And yeah, it's just opened up lots of different conversations along the way.
Fantastic. We're going to be talking about a lot of layers of adversity and triumph in your life. And let's start with the current one. You were recently diagnosed with breast cancer. Currently in treatment. And not surprisingly, you are using this journey to be reducing stigma around talking about breast cancer. What else do you hope to achieve in this journey? And talk about your costume when you show up for chemo.
Yeah, it was it was actually in February that I found a lump, but I was actually going to climb Mount Aconcagua in Argentina, so I didn't want to mention it to begin with. And also, I didn't know how long it had been there, and kind of thought if I go to the doctor, they may well just say, well, let's just see about it. So I went to Argentina, climbed Mount Aconcagua, and then came home and went to the GP, who then referred me straight away to the breast cancer clinic and had biopsies, and got told there and then, you've got breast cancer. And I went, but I've got the London Marathon in 3 weeks' time, and I'm due to be going to Everest to do the Everest Marathon. So I asked if I could delay my surgery by about 3 weeks to be able to go and do the Everest Marathon. I was due to be walking the length of Corsica as well after that, but I kind of recognised that I'm going to have surgery at some point. So it was okay to do the London Marathon. And I suddenly thought, well, I'd got a costume that I was going to be using. And I thought, well, I've got a boob costume under my bed. So I did the London Marathon dressed as a giant boob, because I thought I'm just going to make the best of this situation. And then the consultant sort of said, yes, we it's not going to be detrimental if you delay it by 3 weeks. So I thought, right, well, I will trek to Everest Base Camp dressed as a giant boob. And I have to say, it was incredible. And I've got this one moment where I met this Nepalese woman. I didn't speak any Nepalese. She didn't speak any English. But she came and she was just smiling, and she was just sort of looking under it and looking round it. And I then said to her, I said, well, do you want to put it on? I kind of mimed, do you want to put it on? And she carried on laughing. And so I took it off and put it on her. And it's just the most joyous video. Somebody saw what was happening and took a photo. And, it was that real connection that you can get from not even speaking the same language, but the laughter and, the understanding. So then the Nepalese guys sort of explained to her why it was that I was wearing the boob. I'd wondered if it was maybe a little bit culturally insensitive, but it turned out, not at all, because, breast cancer or cancer does not discriminate, whether you're, the king, or Princess Kate, or somebody who works in the mountain. It can it can affect any one of us. And I really just wanted to show that cancer doesn't have to stop you. Yes, you might have to, sort of change things. And but I really wanted to, just sort of show that even somebody who runs marathons can get cancer. But I wanted to turn it into a positive. And so I was actually, the reason I was so desperate to go was that I was making a documentary about the benefits of the outdoors on people's mental health. And obviously it then came into a bit of a story that I then got diagnosed with breast cancer, so we had that angle as well. So we have finished the documentary. So a documentary that touches on mental health problems, and also cancer. That's 1 in 4 that will struggle with their mental health at some point, and 1 in 2 with cancer. So we really hope that the documentary will, open it up to an audience and will resonate, because it isn't just me. It then affects, family, it affects colleagues. There's lots more people that are affected by either, mental illness or cancer than just the individual themselves. And just once again, just get people talking about it, and more so checking and preventing. That's what I wanted to do. And I've been very open about my journey, and finding the lump, and that I've got breast cancer. And I feel really pleased. It sounds a strange thing to say, but I've actually had 5 women who have come to me and said, because of your posts on social media, I checked myself, I found a lump, and I'm now having treatment, surgery, or whatever. And whilst that isn't a good thing that they obviously have cancer, it's good that it's been found soon, that they wouldn't, had they not have done, and I still find now a lot of women don't actually, they'll say, well, I don't really know what I'm looking for, or what it is. So yeah, I feel really pleased that by being open about it, that's what's happened.
Excellent. And as you say, it doesn't discriminate. In our pre-conversation to the show, between you, me, and the producer, all 3 of us have had cancer or are survivors of it. So yeah, you're reaching a lot of people with that message. And I love, the playfulness, the creativity that you bring to these heavy topics of mental illness, of cancer, and do it in such an effective way. And yet we know you've been through really very real struggles. So, the couple decades of anxiety and depression, what was that moment where you realized, I need help, I'm going to reach out?
I think it was, unfortunately, I got to the point where I couldn't see a reason to live. I just, I really couldn't see that at all. And I unfortunately, I guess I needed to get help from the crisis team. And it was through this help and support that I got. It's taken a long time, and I still take medication, and I still, see a therapist. But again, I'm now very open about that, because how actually could anybody really help me when nobody knew that there was a problem? So I now sort of, want to be open about that, so that hopefully others will open up as well and recognize that possibly they need help as well. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Well, we will be giving links to your socials, because you just walk the talk and shine a light, and are very open in sharing your journey, whatever that journey is. And I think, there is the power of that openness, along with the humor that you bring to it. So more with our 2025 Promise Leader when we come back. Stay tuned.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Oh boy. Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Dear future, we haven't met yet. We don't know what you look like. But at MediaCom, we think about it every day. And we'll say this: if we keep working as hard as we have the past 3 decades, if we keep adding miles of fiber, if we keep advancing our technology, if we keep raising the bar and raising each other up, we won't just be ready for you, we'll be leading the way. Sincerely, MediaCom.
Welcome back to Resiliency Matters. Today we are speaking with Sally Orange, Worldmaker's 2025 Promise Leader honoree. Sally, I want to read, this award is presented to an influencer dedicated to creating solutions for today's interconnected and dynamic world, contributing to a narrative of human thriving. What does that narrative of human thriving in today's world look like to you?
Well, first of all, just a real honor to sort of, find out that, yeah, that this award is, yeah, it just really kind of blew me away, because I don't really always think that I'm just doing what I normally do. When I sort of, people say about volunteering, it's, again, it's 35 years. It's just something that is almost part of me. When I was 16, I was very fortunate that I started volunteering, and I just felt that I got so much from it, helping other people. And I guess that's why I wanted to then become a physiotherapist, so that I could help people when they were at a difficult time. And my career was sort of helping people when they were physically injured. I had actually broke my leg when I was 16 myself, which is what turned into me then wanting to become a physiotherapist, because I needed that help when I was, struggling. It did actually take me quite a long time. It took me 6 years to actually get into physiotherapy, and then another 3 years of study. So it wasn't an easy path to get there, but that determination to know what I wanted to do. And then I think when I struggled with my mental health, it was just a way of also now not wanting anyone else to ever struggle the same way that I did, and making sure that it's much more open for other people to talk about, and realize that they're not alone, because it is a very lonely journey, and you can sometimes just think that there is no way out. And your brain is very clever at being, it can be very, very negative, and we need help to sort of see the other side to situations quite often. So yeah, I just don't want anyone ever to have to find themselves in the situation that I did, and if that means that they can get help sooner. I often say to people that you wouldn't learn to swim in a storm. So I think that if we can teach young people, or people when they're actually well, what they could do to help them when they're not very well, because it's very difficult when you're in that dark time to actually find the resources to use, because everything's kind of all over the place. So yeah, it's really using that time when we're well to deploy the tools and techniques when we're not well.
Excellent. That proactivity and building capacity, so important. And that your answer explains a lot about the empathy that you bring to your work, with your lived experience. So what does this look like for you? You carry a lot as an advocate. You're going through personal challenges. You're dedicated to your own well-being. What are some things that really are pillars in your own personal journey of resilience and thriving?
I think, exercise is a key one. But I say exercise, it's more movement, really. It doesn't have to be exercise. Movement is medicine, is what I've come to realize. And that can be a walk outside, just getting yourself outside in nature. Even just when you go for a walk or a run, you quite often see other people. So that social connection, which I think is another one as well, that another pillar essentially that can be very helpful for people, because you can, the old adage that a problem shared is a problem halved is so true. The weight that you feel that's lifted when you've just explained, and you then can get the opportunity to have a different view to the same situation, because we become so tunnel vision. So I think exercise or movement, that social connection, volunteering, as I say, for me, I get so much from that, helping other people, whether that be when I was younger, I did quite a lot helping older people, working in care homes, and just interacting with them, and just making people feel like they're valued. And I think that's the same with with young people as well, that I get as much from it as hopefully I'm able to give, and seeing them grow and develop, and the skills that you've, or the stories that I've experienced to display different things, when they then come back to you and say, because of you, I've done this or I've done that, it just makes you, really feel good. And I very much, with the volunteering, pass on that power that you feel from it, so that hopefully those young people will go on and volunteer themselves. But it's, in fact, just the other day, just a very small thing, but I was at a craft show, and I was asking this lady if she'd made things and if she could make something for me. It was actually, I was asking her to make a little hat that then had a little boob on the top, so that I can sit at chemo in that. And she said, "Do you know what?" She said, "It's so strange that you've come today." She said, "I've just been diagnosed with cancer." And I, just gave her a hug there and then. And we had a little conversation. Then I sort of went off around the craft fair, and I saw this little, it didn't cost much, but it was a little survival kit, and in it had a little balloon to lift you in the dark times. It had a little track, a little part of a train track, to keep you on track. It had a small ball to help you bounce back. And I just bought it, and I took it over to her, and I said, "I just want to say, I've just got this for you." And she was like, "Oh, this stranger giving this little survival pack." But what I now, she then actually did sort of write about it on Instagram, and shared how this stranger had bought her this gift, and how we'd hugged as though we were friends. And what I believe is that now, she's starting her cancer journey. I'm a couple of months down the road, but I hope that she will remember that. And then if someone comes to her in that situation, she will know how that feels. And so she might do the same for someone else. So it's just almost that little paying it forward. And yeah, it's just those little golden nuggets of sort of showing kindness and compassion. As I say, it didn't cost much, but for her, when she's in that, she'd sort of said to me, "Did you lose your your eyelashes?" And I said, "Well, I've still got them at the moment, but yes, I will lose them." I said, "These are painted on eyebrows at the moment." And just those questions that people are unsure about, and if they've got someone that they feel that they can ask, then yeah, that's what I want them to be able to do.
Beautiful. And before the show, we were talking about how you recently ran to a chemo treatment, and talk about the elderly gentleman and how that impacted him.
Yeah, so that movement is medicine. I'm very much wanting to advocate that, even during treatment. Yes, you can get fatigue, but actually, if you go outside and you just walk. So I've given myself an aspiration. So I call everything at the moment an aspiration rather than a goal. And I do that because if I call it a goal and then I don't achieve it, I'm going to feel as though I fail. Whereas if I call it an aspiration, my aspiration is to run to all of my treatments. So whether it's an appointment with the oncologist, might get in my line flushed out, or actually for chemo itself. So I run there, I'm in my shorts and t-shirt, I arrive at the hospital, I'm dripping in sweat. And that happened the other day, and I sat down, and this elderly gentleman said to me in the waiting room, he said, "Have you just cycled here?" I said, No, I've just ran." He said, "My goodness." He said, "And you're having chemo?" And I said, "Yes, yeah." I said, "I'll walk home." But I said, in my head, it kind of gets the blood flowing. And so when the chemo goes in, it can then, the blood will pump round faster. And he said, "Do you know what?" He said, "You've really inspired me." He said, "I think I'm going to park a little bit further away than I do already." And I said, "That's brilliant." I said, because I was just so pleased that something so, just the fact that I was, sitting in the waiting room, dripping in sweat, that it opened a conversation again. Because I don't think people normally, even the oncologist said, "Have you just ran here?" And I said, "Yep, I'm not, there's nothing physically wrong with my legs." And I'm really grateful for that, because having been a physiotherapist, I know so many people who unfortunately have lost their legs. So I want to use the bits of me that do still work. And yes, there are times when I have to have a little lie down, and I just have to manage it. But if other people see me doing that and see that it's okay to exercise with cancer, I think quite often people think, "Oh, you need to stop doing anything." And I've had quite a few people say to me, "I think you're doing too much." And I kind of think, well, I'm the one who decides if I'm doing too much. And I have been sensible. There's times where I haven't been able to do things and I haven't been able to make them. And it's balance. I think everything in life is, whether it be exercise, whether it be food, or social. If you burn the candle at both ends, then you run things down. So I'm just probably a bit better now at looking after myself, and maybe through the mental health challenges that I've had, I'm coping with this much better. And I think it's so much easier to deal with cancer than it is with mental health, because there's so much more support there, and people are sort of asking, whereas I think with mental health they still just don't know what to say. I mean, some people are like that with cancer, they still don't know what to say. But it's a very interesting situation, as you know, as to how people react when you say, "Oh, now I look like I've got cancer," which is something different. So
Yeah, one of our other award winners this year, Michael Schlitz, was burned. I think 70% of his body, lost both arms with IED. And he made that same point, that people come up to him and are always, he's the wounded warrior, and he knows other people right next to him are struggling with mental health. And he made that point, and is a real champion for the invisible injuries of war. So I love how that theme is coalescing. So a final question: when people think of Sally Orange, what do you want them to remember most? Underneath the iconic fruit costumes, or the records that you have set, but the person inside them?
I hope that people take away a smile, and what a smile can mean to somebody else, and sort of compassion and empathy, really. Because I think if you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, it's never exactly the same. Nobody's cancer is the same, mental health challenge is the same. But if you empathize what it might be like, and ask them how they could be helped, because we say, "Oh, I would just want to be helped the same way as people treat the same way as I've been treated," but we don't all want to be treated the same. So it's asking an individual, how do you want to be treated? And really being sort of significant to that individual, and treating them as an individual with kindness and compassion. And yeah, a smile goes a long, long way. It's something so simple, but we can pretty much all do it. But it can literally change somebody's day. By having someone smile, have someone smiling at you. And if there is somebody struggling with their mental health, and you just go by and give them a smile, it might just be that one thing that interrupts their thought process, which might be negative, and kind of go, "Gosh, somebody's just smiled at me." So I think that's what I would like to think.
Beautiful legacy. Thank you, Sally, for this conversation. And thank you, viewers, for joining us on MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.